Hello and welcome to See You in Court, the podcast that informs you about the Georgia civil justice system, what it means to you, and how it protects individual rights. This podcast is a collaboration between the Georgia Civil Justice Foundation and the Georgia Institute of Technology. Your hosts are Robin Frazer Clark and Lester Tate, who are both past presidents of the State Bar of Georgia and currently serve on the board of directors of the Georgia Civil Justice Foundation. And now this episode of See You in Court.
Good morning, friends and lovers of the law, and welcome with my friend and our extraordinary host, really our lead host here, Robin Frazer Clark. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Lester. How are you?
I'm great, and welcome to all our listeners for another exciting episode of See You in Court. And today we're doing one of our sort of annual things, right, Robin, where we put together the answers to our ultimate question on our podcast every week, right?
Right. What is justice?
What is justice? And we do tell people we're going to ask them that beforehand so they can think about it and they're not required to simply come up with something on the spur of the moment, because we kind of want a thoughtful answer, don't we?
We want a thoughtful answer. And you made a good point to me right before we started recording today about the answers we've received. And we've got about 50 of them now. And what do you want to share with our listeners, like what you have gathered from this?
Well, one of the funny things to me is we ask the exact same question, but we never get the exact same answer. I mean, I haven't gone back and listened to each one of them, but they're all sort of in the same spirit and all, based on the same principles for the most part, but it's never the same. It's never the exact same answer. And, one of the things that I think it's very telling about what justice is about and what our system of justice is about, because it depends on people and it depends on how they answer questions, guilty or not guilty, fine for the plaintiff or the defendant. What do you award them? It's all answers that we are seeking there. And so I thought that it was really sort of indicative of one of the reasons we probably have a jury system is that we've got a core of principles and of things that we believe in and that we hold dear, but that we express in a lot of different ways. But we can come to not just common ground, but in most states, there are some 2/3 jury verdict states, but in most states, you have to have a unanimous verdict. In a criminal case, you have to have a unanimous verdict. So we don't just get people to rally around one part, when they're trying to deliver justice, and they may do it for 12 different reasons,
right,
on the jury. So I've just always found that part of the program very, very interesting. And, our mission here is from the Georgia Civil Justice Foundation to educate the public about our court system and what it's supposed to do. And it's supposed to deliver justice.
Right. And to me, how one word can mean so many different things to different people, it makes it seem as if that word is just unique. It's unique to each person. It's like you say that we've had similar answers. A lot of people have said, well, you just get it allows you to get a shot at justice, just to have a chance. Some people say a chance to be heard. That's all they want. But it just means so many different things to different people. It's a unique word. And when you think about it, it's what we strive for. That's why we do what we do, to get justice for our clients. Uh-huh. And to our clients, in a particular case, it can mean one thing and it can mean something totally different in another case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, one of the great expressions I ever heard was a friend of mine. His father was a lawyer, and he said lawyering was helping people get back like they were before they got like they are, meaning they were arrested, they want to get unarrested, they're sued, they want to get unsued, they're married, they want to get unmarried, whatever it is, which is sort of a functional answer to what we do. But the aspiration is always to, got to be justice. I mean, there's no other. The expression I use is a personal goal, not the system's aspiration. But I hope that as our listeners listen to this today and hear all the different voices of justice, maybe that's what we should call it, this podcast, Voices of Justice, every year, that they'll think about that and what role the court system and lawyers play in trying, not accomplishing, but trying to make that a reality.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with no further ado, here are the voices of justice.
Gilbert, Deitch, and Andrew Rogers.
Justice in this area of the law, as a lawyer who has a crime victim and has a premises liability case, justice is putting together the right team to work on the case. And by that, I mean, there are a lot of rabbit trails, there are a lot of pitfalls, there's a lot of evidentiary questions. And to me, justice for the victim is for the lawyer to recognize he, she, they should team up and work as a team with the differing abilities of counsel, just as Andy alluded to in Martin Six Flags. So to give justice to the victim is to have the right set of lawyers to pursue all the avenues, because you can get stuck very easily on one of these rabbit trails and get tossed, and you shouldn't. But if you got enough eyes and ears on it who know what they're doing, that will give your client justice.
Great. Andy?
Yeah, and I'll tag onto that, or tack onto that. It's not just the lawyers who make up the team. If I had to sit down and count the number of people, and Robin and Lester, you know what I'm talking about. While it's fun to be the one making closing argument, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into a case up until and even beyond that point, that includes paralegals and other assistants, and it's court reporters who do a good job. And we work with a trial consultant very early in our cases, just to help us begin to know where the focus needs to be. And I agree that in order to get full justice for a client, we as lawyers need to make sure we're putting together the best team for our clients. Beyond that, I would say, for our clients, justice comes in a lot of different forms. One of the most powerful displays of justice, and I think justice is probably better described as a verb than a noun, is when a jury is allowed to and does seriously consider what's happened in a case and returns a verdict that's based on the truth of the case. And whether that's a criminal case or a civil case, I think in the civil realm, because as we all know, plaintiffs decide whether to bring a case, not the state. To have a jury, if it comes to that, to make a decision, can mean everything to a client. And if it doesn't go to a jury trial, a settlement can feel like justice for a client. We settled a case a couple of weeks ago with a very fragile client who we were concerned might not recover anything because we had some difficult facts, and we were able to settle the case. And she sat in our conference room and said, you know what? I really, really feel like justice has been done. I've been heard. And that's why any of us do this kind of work. And it looks different for every client. Y'all know it's different. It feels different for every client. And we hopefully are paying attention to that when we're helping them make decisions about how to proceed with the case.
McCracken, Poston.
I always thought justice meant a fair disposition. And I worry that people have perverted the word justice to mean revenge. The show American Justice, our episode got elected on the internet for a period of time the favorite episode. And yet there were people saying, but he was acquitted. In other words, how can that be justice? Well, if she wasn't murdered, then definitely that's justice.
Definitely.
So,
Well, justice even when there's no crime committed.
yeah, exactly. So there's the semantics of the word justice. It bothers me, and as many other icons of our country and our system have been somewhat twisted.
Judge Alvin T. Wong.
I define justice as fairness, opportunity to be heard, and be treated equally. Okay, you got to be fair. You got to have your say, and whatever the rule or the law is, that you're treated like you should be. Okay, not because of your status, not because of your race, not because of your financial wherewithal. That I walk into a court system that I'm going to have an even shake. I mean, I think that's our democracy, right? I mean, that's the way we are supposed to be in this country. We don't always meet the benchmark, but that's the way we're supposed to be. So I think my role is to hopefully keep it on track.
Yeah. Make sure that happens.
Make sure that happens.
Awesome.
Ivy Catl.
A kind of idealist in me says that justice should be literally getting what you deserve. And if I really want to go with my own personal definition of justice, is that it is that the processes and the fortuities of life give somebody what they deserve, or afford somebody what they deserve. And the interesting thing to me is kind of reflecting on it and the actualities of the justice that we deal with, is that the justice to me is a process that is a struggle. And sometimes it is more about the process than it is about the outcome that we see on TV. And it's the opportunity to have an avenue to reach an outcome is justice to me. And so that gets into access to that gets back to the regulatory reform, right? We have citizens in the state who don't have access to the resources, knowledge, whatever it is that they need to adequately engage the process, not to get the result, but to adequately engage the process so that they can be headed towards the result that they deserve. And so to me, I think justice is all about affording people equally an opportunity to engage in a process that may or may not be painful, and most definitely probably gets them towards an uncertain result. But that's the messiness of life.
William Gentry.
There's a story I love to share that my pastor friend Tom Davis told me. And he says, justice is when you're driving down the highway 15 miles an hour over the speed limit and the trooper pulls you over and gives you a ticket. That's justice. Mercy is the trooper pulls you over and just gives you a warning. And grace is when the trooper pulls you over and gives you 2 Super Bowl tickets. But really, justice to me is a resolution that's fair to all involved, including the children in family law cases, because judges and really us as lawyers are charged with looking out for the best interest of the children in family law cases, because they really, it's so easy when a husband and wife or 2 spouses are just beating on each other for the kids to be forgotten. And that's the way I look at justice. Is it fair to the kids too?
Larry Thompson.
For me, in one word, justice is not necessarily somebody being punished because they did something wrong. But for me, it's fairness. That's what justice is.
David Metzger.
It's about using the law to solve problems with fairness. And what I mean by that is when my clients come to me, they're coming with a problem. And it's something that they've been dealing with, living with, and they're not able to solve it on their own. And so they come to me, and my hope is that I can use the law and my knowledge of the law and my skills to help solve that problem for them, whether it's a squatter on the property or a title issue or a boundary dispute, whatever it is, help solve that problem and solve it in a fair way. And if I can do that, then I've been a part of justice.
Stephen Vladeck.
You know, my conception of justice is that it's messy, that it's imprecise, but that it's something that allows us to have faith that the thing that is governing our lives is more stable and neutral and principled than just the will of those who we've elected, right? And that, you know, justice is sort of complicated, but part of what makes it justice is those complications.
Joyce Gist Lewis.
Really, to me, justice is a combination of access, so the right to be heard, and objective accountability, which I would think of as the right to hold other people to a standard rather than having a decision that's made based upon an arbitrary or a biased basis, right? And that standard can come from the Constitution, it can come from statutes, it can come from case law. And we, as to Lester's earlier point, we as lawyers may disagree on the outcome, on whether the outcome was right. But if the rules have been followed, and if the decision is well informed, then I think that's justice. You know, it may not be what I want, but I can't say that justice hasn't been served under that circumstance.
All right, Lester, this is the time in our show where we like to talk a lot about some legal items in the news. And the first thing, though, before we get to that, I actually wanted to mention that there is an entity called FeedSpot that ranks podcast. And we got notice that our podcast, See You in Court, is among the top 100 Georgia podcasts.
Wow.
According to FeedSpot.
Wow. Well, thank you, FeedSpot, and thank you to our listeners for moving us up the food chain here in Georgia. You know, that's
really.
Isn't it amazing? You know, I think it wasn't that long ago that I'm sure there weren't 100 podcasts in Georgia. There probably weren't 10. You know, but that's
good point.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Very happy. So I'll go first, and I've got a news item that happened last month, and this is out of the Northern District of Florida, the Pensacola Division, and it caught my eye because I just couldn't believe it. And when it came out, comments about who's right, who's wrong, basically evenly split 50-50. But this involves an incident where a district court judge in Florida, issued an order, and it is to admonish a plaintiff's attorney, a woman, for sticking her chewing gum underneath the counsel's table in his courtroom. And it's a whole order. And he starts out saying, I have served as a judge for 23 years. I've never had to write an order like this, and I never dreamed I would have to do so, but unfortunately I do. And he goes on and says that the assistant U.S. attorney assigned his courtroom sat down at counsel's table for a hearing in the afternoon. When she got up, there was gum on her skirt. And they started an investigation. And the judge says, well, it has to be from the plaintiff's attorney who had a hearing here this morning. It's got to be hers. And I thought, what, did they do a DNA test on her saliva or something? But they had folks pull the gum out from under the table. The judge says, I inferred that the gum had to have been stuck under the table at some point during that motion hearing in the morning. And then he asked the plaintiff's attorney about it, and she admitted it. She submitted a letter to the court saying she sincerely apologized and offered to pay for any damages. And so he says, well, I'll accept that apology. I'll leave it up to her I'll leave it up to the ASUA whether she accepts the apology or wants her skirt dry cleaned by the plaintiff's attorney. So I'm not going to impose additional sanctions. But he says the order to show cause is discharged with the admonishment that what the plaintiff did by sticking her chewed gum under a courtroom table was inappropriate and unacceptable, and had better not happen again. And he writes in a footnote that if it does, then I will think up some sanctions commensurate with the school child nature of the violation. Maybe sitting in the courtroom under the supervision of a court security officer, handwriting, I will not stick gum under a courtroom table again 100 times on notebook paper. So that caught my eye because number one, I couldn't believe any attorney was chewing gum in court, but apparently she was. Number two, when you read the comments online about it, some of them thought the judge was ridiculous for taking the time, federal court judge, for writing an order. I mean, that's a little much.
Was this supposed to be funny, though? Is this like, they have these orders, when Alabama's playing in the national championship that excuses all lawyers in whatever district of Alabama to go, or Georgia, now.
Right.
Is that meant to be funny, or was it...
Maybe. It didn't come across his notebook. His footnote was a little funny, but it didn't come across to me as funny. So some people sided with the judge saying, yeah, that's ridiculous. She shouldn't have been chewing gum in the courtroom. Others sided with the plaintiff's attorney saying, give me a break, that a judge would take time to do that. But I'll tell you, I do know a Fulton County Superior Court judge who has an absolute rule, no gum chewing by anyone, defendants, parties, judges, or attorneys, anybody. And I saw him once hold somebody in contempt for chewing gum. So, I mean, I know there's some idiosyncrasies about gum chewing out there.
When you read the footnote there, I thought maybe he or she, I don't even know who the judge is, was trying to be funny there, but
maybe. Judge Kent Wetherell II, the guy.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
So let's talk about your news item, Lester.
I'll get us something else to chew on here. How's that?
Okay.
I
get
Robin, it. You and I are amongst the hundreds of thousands of lawyers who practice alone or nearly alone or in a small firm. And that's what really caught my eye. I want to put that out there first, because some of this has to do a little bit with politics, and that's really not what caught my eye here. Although I do disapprove of the policy that gave rise to it. But my article is from today's New York Times. And the article is entitled, Big Law Firms Bowed to Trump. A core of, quote, little guys, close quote, jumped in to fight him. Sole practitioners, former government litigators, and small law firms stepped up to help challenge the Trump administration's agenda in court after the White House sought to punish many big firms. And so, as background, and probably as most of our listeners know, the White House had entered a number of orders, particularly against law firms like Perkins Coie, who had been a Democratic firm, and it banned them from federal buildings. And it was, in my view, it's plainly inappropriate targeting of a law firm for their political views. And I would say the exact same thing if it were, a Democratic president targeting a Republican law firm. But I thought the interesting thing about it is, and one of the ways that our system works is that, if policies violate the rights of a minority of people, they have the right to challenge it. That's what being able to walk through the courthouse doors really are. And so a lot of these big firms, immediately quit doing anything that would challenge the administration. And I've not known of that to happen before. Democratic, Republican president, Whig, whatever, that's happened. But then they had this whole cadre of small firms and solo firms that came forward. And one of the guys says, I don't know if the administration knew how many little guys are out there, said Michael H. Ansel, a sole practitioner in Morristown, New Jersey, who was earlier this year joined the Pro Bono Litigation Corps, newly launched by Lawyers for Good Government, a legal nonprofit. And he goes on to say that, there's been a tsunami of lawsuits against the administration, more than 400, according to the New York Times tracker. This pro bono litigation corps is led by John Marks, who's founder of the nonprofit Search for Common Ground, and Gary DeBanco, who retired as a litigation partner from Skadden, Arp, Slate, Meager, and Flom years before the firm mollified Mr. Trump by pledging $100 million in pro bono work. That's what they had done. And so included in this article, I want to give a couple of shout outs. Included in this article is it says necessities like legal malpractice insurance are covered by Lawyers for Good Government, which is funded by donations, including $1.6 million given by Atlanta trial lawyers, including Jay Sad, co-founder of a small Atlanta firm. And we know Jay, and I want to give him the shout out. And then it goes on to quote our friend Karen Burgess, who was president last year of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, which you and I both belong to. You're on your way to Vancouver for your coronation there. And yes. Karen was also past treasurer of American Board of Trial Advocates, which was something that I did. And so it says the vast majority of they were talking about signers of a brief by Perkins Coie that supported Perkins Coie, saying no law firm ought to be targeted. And said the vast majority of signers are far smaller firms. Karen C. Burgess, a commercial litigator with her own firm in Austin, Texas, said she signed because the executive orders, quote, blew my mind, close quote, reminding her of McCarthy-era blacklists. They got the chilling effect they hoped for. When Ms. Burgess read in March that the Trump administration's investigation of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at 4 colleges had swept in her undergraduate alma mater, Rice University, she called its leadership with an offer. If Rice winds up in court, we'll give what we can and be happy to do it, she said. Ms. Burgess pointed out that that of the 1.3 million lawyers in the United States, only a fraction work for big law firms. And as Jerry Clower used to say when he was joking about, don't go writing me any letters now. If you're at a big firm, I'm not cussing you here. A lot of these big firms do a lot of great work too, but I felt like this was one where the little guys like you and I came forward and sort of banded together, and a bunch of little guys can make a pretty big army from time to time.
Totally agree. It hits home with me, obviously. We're both sole practitioners. But it reminds me to mention that one of our friends, Seth Kirschenbaum, a criminal defense attorney, who's just recently retired, by the way. I think he told me the other day he finally finished his last case. He and another friend of ours, Lynn Borsick, who's also a criminal defense attorney, they have started a group of lawyers, mainly folks like us, criminal defense and civil plaintiffs, called the Georgia Lawyers for the Rule of Law. And they did it for the exact same reason that these folks signed that brief and made that offer to Rice University, that we've got to do something. And you remember when we had Professor Vladeck, Steve Vladeck, on, we asked him, what can we do? And he said, keep educating, keep talking about it. And I think that's one of the goals of Georgia Lawyers for the Rule of Law. And I hope we're going to have Seth Kirschenbaum and Lynn Borsick on as guests soon to talk about their endeavor.
That'd be great. You sort of have recruited me to that group. I need to sign up. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to feel embarrassed, and I'm going to do it right after this. But also, I talked to our friend Eddie Garland, who's involved with that group as well. And one of the things he wanted me to try to do, which I think is also important. We're both little guys, but you're one of those 404 lawyers, Robin. You're right there in a skyscraper while I'm out here in the hinterlands. And so we need folks from all places, to help with different things, and with standing up for people and standing up for people's rights.
Absolutely. And that's what this group intends to do. And so is the group that you were talking about. Great effort. I have one more little item that I wanted to talk about. It's quick, but it is about fake Google reviews online of lawyers. And it hit home with me because I have a fake Google review for me where an anonymous person, made up name, who I've never heard of or certainly never represented, gave a 1-star review to me, totally fake. I tried to get to the bottom of it. What I think happens is there's companies out there that try to take away your bad reviews. And
they want you to get a bad review so they can come in.
They put a bad review. Yeah, they're the ones who create them. And then they say, oh, hire us. Because immediately after I got the fake review, I started getting all these calls from this company. Hey, you've got a bad review. Hire us and we'll take care of it. It's a total scam. But here's a case out of Houston where a Houston law firm alleged it was defamed by 99 fake 3-star reviews. Exact same thing from people they never represented, never heard of. And they were they were able to track it down to a location, the IP address, and they found that 2 people in Ohio were responsible for it, and they've sued those people. And the case got thrown out by the trial court. The appellate court in Houston came back and said, no, let them go. That they have defamed them. So I'm keeping an eye on that because that's exactly what happened to me. And it just really upsets me.
No, I totally understand. In this business that we have, your reputation is everything, and you're also in a position where, with the general public, not with your client, but with the general public, you're never going to get more than a 50% satisfaction rate if you're a trial lawyer, because one side's going to win and the other side's going to lose.
True.
Or as 99% of civil cases, it happens in 99% of civil cases, the case gets settled and then both are a little mad and a little happy, along the way.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for ferreting that out and catching on to the scams, like the arsonist who wants to help the fire department after he sets the fire,
Yeah. That I'm pretty sure that's what this company is doing, because how would they even know I had and here's the other thing. I happened to see another lawyer in Decatur, Georgia, friend of ours, had the same person's name with a fake 1-star review. So this company is going out, putting fake reviews and then hoping they can sell you, get you to pay them to remove it. So it's just, there are good things and bad things about the internet. And that's one of the bad things, I think.
Yeah, it's, but in some ways it is more, it's more traceable, like
true.
the firm that you had the piece about in Texas. It's more traceable. You can, as the gospel song says, you can run on for a long time, but good God Almighty going to cut you down, so.
Oh, well, that's all I have, Lester. You have anything else?
I do not.
Okay.
But great to see you and to
see
up
you.
Another exciting episode here.
Yeah, so our producer, Philip, is going to be putting together the What is Justice, and I'm looking forward to that. And until next time, we'll see you in court.
Thank you for listening to See You in Court. Brought to you by the Georgia Civil Justice Foundation and the Georgia Institute of Technology. Please subscribe to this podcast and consider writing a review. You may find related documents to this week's episode on our website, seeyouincourt.podbean.com. Please send any questions, suggestions, or ideas to seeyouincourtpodcast@gmail.com.